And if beauty is terror, said Julian, then what is desire? We think we have many desires, but in fact we have only one. What is it?
Hi everyone, I'm Skye, and today I will be discussing tissues, the groups of cells that form every organ in the human body. I'm still on vacation mode, and while I'm waiting for my breakfast, I thought this would be the perfect time to continue our anatomy series. We'll explore the four major tissue types, learn their structures and functions, and see how they work together to keep the body functioning. So let's begin with a simple question. What is a tissue? If you look at your skin, you're not seeing just one giant cell. Instead, you're looking at millions of similar cells working together. When cells with similar structures join together to perform the same job, they form a tissue. A tissue is simply a group of similar cells that work together to carry out a common function. The study of tissues is called histology, an important branch of anatomy that helps us understand both normal body structures and diseases. Tissues also fit into a large level of organization. Individual cells combine to form tissues. Tissues combine to form organs, and organs work together in organ systems to keep the body alive. Although the human body contains many specialized tissues, they can all be grouped into four major tissue types. Let's take a closer look at each one. First is epithelial tissue, which covers body surfaces, lines cavities, and forms glands. It acts as the body's protective covering while also carrying out functions such as absorption and secretion. The second is connective tissue, the most abundant tissue in the body. As its name suggests, it supports, binds, and protects different structures while also storing energy and helping repair damaged tissues. The third is muscle tissue, which contracts to produce movement. Every voluntary actions, such as walking, and every involuntary actions, such as your heartbeat, depends on muscle tissue. Finally, we have nervous tissue, the body's communication network. It receives information, processes it, and sends signals that coordinate body cavities. Before studying epithelial tissue itself, it's important to understand how its cells stay connected. Unlike many other tissues, epithelial cells are packed very closely together. To keep these cells attached and functioning as a single layer, the body uses specialized structures called intercellular junctions. There are three major types. Tight junctions create a seal between neighboring cells, preventing substances from leaking through. They're especially important in tissues that form protective linings. Desmosomes act like tiny spot welds. They anchor cells firmly together and help tissues resist stretching and mechanical stress. They're especially abundant in the outer layers of the skin. Finally, gap junctions are small channels that directly connect neighboring cells. These channels allow ions and small molecules to pass from one cell to another, enabling rapid communication. A classic example is cardiac muscle, where gap junctions help heart cells contract in a coordinated rhythm. Together, these junctions allow epithelial cells to function as one continuous tissue. Now that we know how epithelial cells stay connected, let's look at the tissue itself. Think about the different surfaces inside and outside your body. Your skin, the lining of your stomach, your intestines, and even your airways all have one thing in common. They're covered by epithelial tissue. Epithelial tissue forms protective coverings and linings throughout the body. One important feature is its apical surface, the free surface that faces the body's exterior or the inside of a cavity. Beneath the epithelial cells lies a thin supporting layer called the basement membrane, which anchors the tissue to the underlying connective tissue. Another unique characteristic is that epithelial tissue is avascular, meaning it contains no blood vessels. Instead, nutrients and oxygen diffuse from the connective tissue underneath. Despite lacking blood vessels, epithelial tissue repairs itself remarkably quickly because its cells divide rapidly. For example, the outer layer of your skin is constantly being replaced. Its major functions include protection, absorption, secretion, and excretion, depending on its location in the body. Epithelial tissue is classified based on two features: the shape of its cells and the number of cell layers. The first type is simple squamous epithelium. Have you wondered how oxygen moves from your lungs into your bloodstream in just seconds? This process depends on one of the thinnest tissue in the body, simple squamous epithelium. This tissue consists of a single layer of flat, scale-like cells. Because it's extremely thin, substances such as oxygen, carbon dioxide, and nutrients can pass through it quickly by diffusion. You'll find simple squamous epithelium lining the air sacs of the lungs where gas exchange occurs, as well as the blood vessels and lymphatic vessels where efficient transport is essential. Its thin structure makes it ideal for rapid exchange, but not for protection. But not all simple epithelia have the same job. Simple cuboidal epithelium is designed for absorption and secretion. Its cells are about as tall as they are wide, giving them a cube-like appearance. This tissue commonly lines the kidney tubules, where it helps reabsorb water and useful substances while secreting wastes into the forming urine. It also covers the ovaries and lines the ducts of several glands, where secretion is an important function. Because these cells contain more cytoplasm than squamous cells, they have greater capacity to perform cavity cellular processes. For some organs, absorption isn't the only job, they also need protection. As food moves through your digestive system, your body must absorb nutrients efficiently while also protecting the lining of the digestive tract. This is the role of simple columnar epithelium. These cells are taller than they are wide, allowing them to contain more organelles for absorption and secretion. Many have microvilli, tiny finger-like projections that greatly increase the surface area for nutrient absorption, especially in the small intestine. Scattered among these cells are goblet cells, which produce mucus. This mucus lubricates and protects the lining of the digestive tract. In some locations, such as the uterine tubes, the cells also possess cilia. These hair-like projections beat rhythmically to move materials, including the egg, toward the uterus. Together, these adaptations make simple columnar epithelium highly efficient at both absorption and protection. But not every epithelial tissue is as straightforward as the ones we've discussed. At first glance, this tissue looks like it has several layers of cells. However, that's actually an illusion. This tissue is called pseudostratified columnar epithelium. The word pseudo means false. So although the nuclei appear at different heights, every cell still touches the basement membrane, making it a single layer of cells. This tissue lines much of the respiratory tract, including the trachea and bronchi. It contains goblet cells, which continuously produce mucus. Dust, bacteria, and other airborne particles become trapped in this sticky mucus instead of reaching the lungs. The tissue also has cilia that beat upward in a coordinated motion, moving the mucus toward the throat where it can be swallowed or coughed out. This process helps keep the airways clean. One important clinical application is smoking. Smoking damages these cilia, reducing their ability to remove mucus and increasing the risk of respiratory infections. Fortunately, if smoking stops early enough, these cilia can recover. But some parts of the body need more protection than a single layer of cells can provide. If you're going to look at your skin, you'll notice that it protects you from scratches, friction, heat, and harmful microorganisms every single day. A single layer of cells wouldn't be enough to handle all of that. That's why the outer surface of the body is covered by stratified squamous epithelium. Instead of a single layer, stratified squamous epithelium is made up of many layers of cells. As the surface cells wear away, deeper cells divide to replace them, allowing the tissues to continually renew itself. In the skin, the outermost cells become filled with keratin, a tough waterproof protein that strengthens the tissue and helps reduce water loss. This form is known as keratinized stratified squamous epithelium. In contrast, areas such as the mouth, vagina, and anal canal must remain moist. These locations contain non-keratinized stratified squamous epithelium, which lacks the thick keratin layer. Although their structures differ slightly, both types share the same primary function, protecting underlying tissues from friction and injury. Stratified squamous epithelium is the most common type, but it isn't the only one. The next types are less common, but they still play important roles in protecting gland ducts and certain passageways. The first is stratified cuboidal epithelium. It usually consists of 2 to 3 layers of cube-shaped cells and lines the ducts of the sweat glands, mammary glands, salivary glands, and pancreas. Its primary roles are protection and secretion, ensuring that gland ducts remain intact while transporting their products. The second is stratified columnar epithelium. This tissue is relatively rare and is found in portions of the male urethra and pharynx. Like stratified cuboidal epithelium, it also contributes to protection and secretion. Even though these tissues aren't as widespread as stratified squamous epithelium, they demonstrate how epithelial tissues are adapted to its specific needs of different organs. Some organs have a different job. They need to stretch without being damaged. Think about what happens after drinking several glasses of water. As your bladder fills, it expands dramatically, yet its lining doesn't tear. This remarkable ability comes from transitional epithelium. Unlike other epithelial tissues, transitional epithelial cells change shape depending on how much the organ is stretched. When the bladder is empty, the surface cells appear rounded or cube-shaped. As the bladder fills and expands, these same cells flatten, allowing the tissue to stretch while maintaining a protective barrier. This specialized tissue lines the urinary bladder, ureters, and part of the urethra, making it perfectly suited for organs whose volume changes regularly. It's an excellent example of how the structure of a tissue directly reflects its function. But epithelial tissue does more than cover and line surfaces. It also forms glands. Covering and protecting the body is only one role of epithelial tissue. Another equally important role is forming glands, which produce and release substances the body needs every day. Whether it's saliva that begins digestion, sweat that cools the body, or hormones that regulate body functions, all of these secretions originate from glandular epithelium. Because glands release their products in different ways, they're divided into 2 major categories: endocrine glands and exocrine glands. Understanding the difference between these 2 types is essential because many common diseases involve abnormalities in gland function. The easiest way to distinguish these glands is by asking one simple question: does the gland have a duct? The simplest way to classify glands is by whether or not they have a duct. Endocrine glands are ductless. Instead of releasing their products through tubes, they secrete hormones directly into the bloodstream, allowing these chemical messengers to travel throughout the body and regulate distant organs. In contrast, exocrine glands possess ducts that carry their secretions directly to body surfaces or into body cavities. Examples include sweat glands, salivary glands, and the pancreas, which releases digestive enzymes into the digestive tract. A useful memory trick is endocrine enters the blood, exocrine exits through a duct. Keeping this distinction in mind makes it much easier to identify glands type in anatomy and physiology. Exocrine glands also differ in how they're built. Not all exocrine glands have the same structure. Some are made of just one secretory cells, while others consist of complex branching systems. The simplest type is the unicellular exocrine gland, represented by the goblet cells. Even though it's only one cell, it produces large amounts of mucus that lubricate and protects epithelial surfaces. Most exocrine glands, however, are multicellular, meaning they're composed of many secretory cells working together. These glands may have simple unbranched ducts or compound branched ducts. Their secretory portions may also be tubular, coiled tubular, or alveolar, depending on their function. These structural differences allow glands to efficiently produce, store, and transport their secretions. Knowing how glands are built is only part of the story. They also differ in how they release their secretions. Exocrine glands don't all release their products in the same way. In fact, there are 3 different mechanisms of secretion, each with its own unique process. The most common is merocrine secretion. Here, secretory vesicles fuse with the cell membrane and release their contents through exocytosis. The cell remains completely intact, allowing it to continue producing secretions. Salivary glands, sweat glands, and the pancreas all use this method. The second mechanism is apocrine secretion. In this process, the upper portion of the cell pinches off along with the secretory product. Because part of the cell is lost, the cell repairs itself before secreting again. Examples include the mammary glands and ceruminous glands, which produce earwax. Finally, holocrine secretion is the most dramatic. The entire cell fills with secretory products and eventually ruptures, releasing everything at once. The destroyed cell is then replaced by a new one. This is how sebaceous glands produce the oil that lubricates and protects the skin. A simple way to remember these mechanisms is merocrine, the cell stays intact; apocrine, part of the cell is lost; holocrine, the whole cell is sacrificed. So far, we've focused on epithelial tissue. Now, let's look at connective tissue, which supports, protects, and connects different parts of the body. Unlike epithelial tissue, which mainly covers and lines surfaces, connective tissue provides support, strength, and connection throughout the body. Imagine trying to build a house using only paint. No matter how good the paint is, without a frame to support it, the house wouldn't stand. Our body works the same way. It needs a tissue that provides strength, support, and connection. And that's the role of connective tissue. Connective tissue is the most abundant and widely distributed tissue in the human body. Unlike epithelial tissue, whose cells are tightly packed together, connective tissue has cells that are separated by a material called the extracellular matrix. This matrix is made up of ground substances and protein fibers, and its composition determines whether a connective tissue is soft like fat, firm like cartilage, or hard like a bone. Another important characteristic is that connective tissue differ in their blood supply. Some are highly vascular, while others, such as cartilage, have very little blood supply. Because connective tissue appears in many forms throughout the body, it performs a wide variety of function. Those characteristics allow connective tissue to perform many different jobs throughout the body. Because connective tissue is found throughout the body, it performs many essential functions. First, it supports and binds structure together, forming the framework that helps organs maintain their shape. It also protects delicate organs, cushion tissues from injury, and fills spaces between body structures. Certain connective tissues store fat, which serves as an energy reserve, provides insulation, and cushions internal organs. Some connective tissues, particularly bone marrow, are responsible for producing blood cells, while others contain immune cells that help defend the body against bacteria, viruses, and other harmful microorganisms. Another important function is repair. Whenever tissues are injured, connective tissue plays a major role in the healing process. To perform all of these functions, connective tissue contains several specialized cell types, each with its own role. These functions are possible because connective tissue contains several specialized cells. Although connective tissue contains many different cells, 4 are especially important to remember. The most common is the fibroblast. Think of fibroblasts as the body's builders. Their primary function is to produce the collagen, elastic, and reticular fibers that give connective tissue its strength and flexibility. Next are macrophages. Their name literally means big eaters, which describes their job perfectly. Through phagocytosis, they engulf bacteria, damage cells, and foreign particles, helping protect the body from infection. Another important cell is the mast cell. Mast cells release histamine, which increases blood flow and contributes to inflammation during injury or allergic reactions. They also release heparin, a substance that helps prevent blood clotting. During an allergic reaction, immunoglobulin E antibodies bind to mast cells, triggering the release of histamine. This is why allergies can cause redness, swelling, itching, and increased mucus production. Finally, white blood cells move from the bloodstream into connective tissues whenever the body needs additional immune protection. Together, these specialized cells maintain, protect, and repair connective tissues throughout the body. These cells don't work alone. They're supported by protein fibers within the extracellular matrix, and those fibers give connective tissue its unique properties. The extracellular matrix isn't just empty space. It also contains protein fibers that determine how strong, flexible, or supportive a connective tissue will be. The first type is the collagen fiber. Collagen fibers are thick and extremely strong, providing excellent resistance to pulling forces. They're especially abundant in tendons and ligaments. The second type is the elastic fiber. These fibers can stretch and return to their original shape, making them ideal for structures such as large arteries, certain ligaments, and the respiratory tract. The third type is the reticular fiber. Reticular fibers are much thinner and form delicate branching networks that support soft organs like the liver, spleen, and lymph nodes. Together, these fiber types allow connective tissues to meet the mechanical demands of different parts of the body. By combining these fibers with different cells and matrix materials, the body creates several distinct types of connective tissues. The first type of connective tissue proper is areolar connective tissue, sometimes called loose connective tissue. Its soft and gel-like matrix contains both collagen and elastic fibers, giving it a balance of strength and flexibility. You'll find areolar tissue beneath most epithelial tissues, around blood vessels, and between muscles. It also plays an important role in supporting epithelial tissue. Remember that epithelial tissue has no blood vessels. Nutrients and oxygens must diffuse from nearby blood vessels located within the areolar connective tissue. In other words, areolar tissue helps nourish the epithelial tissue lying above it. Because of its loose arrangement, it also provides flexibility while cushioning surrounding structures. Areolar tissue is only one type of loose connective tissue. Let's look at two other specialized forms. The other types of loose connective tissue have highly specialized functions. The first is adipose tissue, which is composed mainly of adipocytes, or fat cells. Although body fat is often associated only with energy storage, it has several important roles. It cushions organs against physical injury, helps insulate the body to reduce heat loss, and serves as a long-term energy reserve. The second type is reticular connective tissue. Instead of storing fat, this tissue contains numerous reticular fibers that form a fine supporting framework for organs such as the liver, spleen, and lymphatic organs. These delicate networks help support immune cells while maintaining the soft structure of these organs. Even though both tissues belong to the loose connective tissue category, each is adapted for a completely different function. Some parts of the body need even greater strength, and that's where dense connective tissue comes in. Some parts of the body require much greater strength than loose connective tissue can provide. This is where the dense connective tissue becomes essential. Dense connective tissue contains tightly packed collagen fibers, making it highly resistant to pulling forces. You'll find it in tendons, which connect muscle to bones, ligaments, which connect bones to one another, and endodermis, the deeper layer of the skin. However, not every tissue should resist movement. Some structures need to stretch repeatedly and then return to their original shape. That's the role of elastic connective tissue. Because it contains abundant elastic fibers, this tissue allows structures such as the walls of large arteries, parts of the airways, and the vocal cords to stretch and recoil without being damaged. Together, dense and elastic connective tissues demonstrate how differences in fiber composition allows the body to meet a wide variety of chemical demands. So far, we've covered connective tissue proper. Now, let's move on to the specialized connective tissues, starting with cartilage. Have you ever wondered that an injury to your knee or ear often takes much longer to heal than a cut on your skin? One major reason is that cartilage has a very poor blood supply, with fewer blood cells delivering oxygen and nutrients. The healing process is much slower. The cells of cartilage are called chondrocytes, and each one sits inside a small cavity known as lacuna. There are 3 major types of cartilage, each adapted for a different function. The first is hyaline cartilage, the most abundant type. It provides smooth surfaces at the ends of bones, reducing friction during joint movement. It also found in the nose and part of the respiratory tract. The second is elastic cartilage, which contains many elastic fibers. This makes it flexible enough to maintain the shape of structures like the external ear while still allowing them to bend. The third is fibrocartilage, the strongest type. Rich in collagen fibers, it resists compression and acts as a shock absorber in structures such as the intervertebral discs and menisci of the knee. Each type of cartilage is especially designed to meet the mechanical demands of its location. Some parts of the body need even greater strength and support. That's where bone comes in. When you hear the word bone, it's easy to think only of the skeleton. But bone is much more than a rigid framework. It is a living connective tissue. Bone, also called osseous tissue, has a hard extracellular matrix rich in calcium and phosphate salts, giving it exceptional strength. Its mature cells, called osteocytes, are housed in small spaces called lacunae, similar to the arrangement of chondrocytes in cartilage. Bone performs several essential functions. It supports the body, protects organs such as the brain and heart, provides attachment sites for muscle to produce movement, and contains bone marrow, where many blood cells are formed. Although bone appears solid and unchanging, it is constantly being broken down and rebuilt in a process called bone remodeling, allowing it to adapt and repair throughout life. The last specialized connective tissue is quite different from the others because it's actually a liquid, blood. When most people think of connective tissue, they imagine something solid. But blood is also classified as connective tissue because its cells are suspended in an extracellular matrix. Unlike cartilage or bone, blood has a liquid matrix called plasma. Floating within the plasma are 3 main components. Red blood cells transport oxygen from the lungs to the body's tissues and carry carbon dioxide back to the lungs. White blood cells protect the body by recognizing and destroying harmful microorganisms. Platelets help stop bleeding by forming blood clots when a blood vessel is damaged. Together, these components allow blood to transport nutrients, hormones, gases, and waste, while also regulating body temperature and defending the body against disease. With that, we've completed the major types of connective tissue. Before we move on to the next major tissue type, there's one more important concept to cover: body membranes. These membranes are formed by combinations of epithelial and connective tissues, showing how different tissue types work together. Serous membranes line body cavities that do not open to the outside, such as the thoracic and abdominal cavities. They secrete serous fluid, which reduces friction between moving organs. Mucous membranes, or mucosae, line passages that open to the external environment, including the digestive, respiratory, and and urinary tracts. They produce mucus, which protects and lubricates these surfaces. The cutaneous membrane is simply the skin, the body's protective outer covering. Last, synovial membranes line movable joints and produce synovial fluid, allowing bones to glide smoothly during movement. These membranes remind us that tissues rarely work alone. They combine to perform specialized functions throughout the body. Now, let's move on to the third major tissue type, muscle tissue. Every movement you make, from blinking, smiling, to walking across the room, depends on muscle tissue. Even while you're asleep, muscle tissue continues working to keep your heart beating and your lungs breathing. The defining feature of muscle tissue is its ability to contract and relax, producing force that creates movements. This process also generates heat, helping maintain a stable body temperature. There are 3 types of muscle tissue, each adapted for a specific role in the body. Let's compare them. The first type is skeletal muscle, attached to bones by tendons. It allows us to perform voluntary movements such as walking, riding, and lifting objects. Under the microscope, it appears striated, meaning it has the visible light and dark bands. The second type is smooth muscle. It lines the wall of hollow organs such as the stomach, intestines, bladder, uterus, and blood vessels. Unlike skeletal muscle, it lacks striations and functions involuntarily, moving food, urine, and other substances without conscious effort. The third type is cardiac muscle, found only in the heart. It also striated, but it contracts involuntarily. A unique feature of cardiac muscle is the presence of intercalated discs, which connect neighboring cells and allows the heart to beat as one coordinated pump. A simple way to remember these muscles is skeletal moves your skeleton, smooth moves substances through organs, cardiac moves blood. Movement is only part of the picture. The body also needs a system to receive information and coordinate responses. That's the role of nervous tissue. Imagine accidentally touching a hot object. Before you even realize what happened, your hand pulls away. This rapid response is made possible by nervous tissue, the body's communication network. Nervous tissue is found in the brain, spinal cord, and peripheral nerves. Its primary functional cells are neurons, which generate and transmit electrical signals called nerve impulses. Supporting these neurons are neuroglial cells or glial cells. Although they don't conduct impulses themselves, they nourish, protect, and support neurons, ensuring that the nervous system functions efficiently. Working together, neurons and neuroglia allows us to sense changes, process information, remember, learn, and coordinate both voluntary and involuntary activities throughout the body. Before we finish, let's do a quick recap of the key points. To summarize, a tissue is a group of similar cells working together to perform a common function, and the study of tissues is known as histology. Throughout this chapter, we've explored the 4 major tissue types. Epithelial tissue covers body surfaces, line cavities, forms glands, and carries out protection, absorption, secretion, and excretion. Connective tissue supports, binds, protects, stores energy, transports materials, and plays a vital role in immunity and tissue repair. Muscle tissue generates movements through contractions, while nervous tissue serves as the body's communication systems by transmitting electrical signals and coordinating body cavities. We also learned that body membranes combine different tissue types to protect organs, reduce friction, and support normal body function. But the most important takeaway is that no tissue works alone. Every organ in the human body is built from these 4 tissue types working together, each contributing its own specialized role. By understanding tissues, you'll have a strong foundation for learning about organs, organ systems, physiology, and many of the clinical concepts you'll encounter. And that's everything for today's lesson. I hope the explanation made this topic easy to understand. Thank you so much for studying with me. If this video helped you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn the notification bell so you won't miss future medical or science videos. Until next time, study smart, be curious, and I'll see you in the next one.